what I'm going to do for you is to share 3 very intimate stories with you. Keep in mind, all these 3 stories happen in a very, very long distance and time. Some of them, the origin of the story began 2,500 years ago. The first story I would like to share with you is called Trilogy of Sound. Quite a few years ago, I was introduced to a very elegant British lady. She said, Mingwei, I was following your work for many, many years. And if you'd like to come to my home in Scotland, please come and visit. At that time, I've never been to Scotland. I thought, why not? It would be a fantastic trip. So when I show up in her house, this was her house. Exactly. I was, coming from Taiwan. This is something out of a fairy tale. This place is called Mount Stuart on Isle of Bute. It just happened this person, Lady Sophie, is the direct descendant of the House of Tudor. So it took me 3 visits to visit Mount Stuart to come up with an idea called Trilogy of Sounds. The first part of the sound is within the palace itself. This was the living room. When you enter, hopefully you will hear the songs of canaries. If you follow the lead of the songbirds up the stairs, going through beautiful, beautiful spaces, this is where you end up with. It was an observation tower where Sophie's grandparents and great-great-grandparents lived. In the morning, they would have tea and coffee and have servants bring things to them. However, during World War I, the Mount Stuart, the palace itself, became a war hospital for the Navy. So Sophie's grandmother, Lady Bute, became one of the nurses who took care of 2,000 soldiers' lives there. So I thought it would be a very beautiful connection with the people's life who were cured with the canaries in the space and the exotic plants. The second space is that you need to go through her dining room. So on the wall were her ancestors, the kings and queens and duchesses. And then you will go through her private chapel and then end up in a space called armory. For this project, I worked with local students, musical students. So each one of them would be practicing an instrument with the doors closed. Therefore, no one, either the students or the people across from the room, would know if there were really people practicing it. So there is a lot of repetition of music. It's about the path to perfection. The third part of the Trilogy of Sound is in the royal garden. When you walk and take a stroll through the royal garden, this is what you find. A very large wind chime that was strung on 4 large, gigantic lime trees. When you stand inside of the wind chime, the first thing you feel is the wind, the breeze that comes and brushes against your face. And the second thing you say or feel is the sound of the wind chime. The second story I want to share with you is called the Bodhi Tree Project. This origin of the project happened at least 2,500 years ago. Okay. Many of you know that the historical Siddhartha was sitting underneath a Bodhi tree when he was enlightened, right? So, and that was happened 2,500 years ago. 200 years later, there was an eradication of Buddhism. The king Ashoka at that time was the king who ruled the northern India and who also built a protecting palaces and university around this particular tree that witnessed the enlightenment of Buddha. So it just happened King Ashoka's daughter, Princess Sanghamitta, was a Buddhist nun. So she went into her father's palace before this destructive army came and cut down this tree. She went in there and took a small branch, hid in her robe, escaped to Ceylon, which is what we call Sri Lanka now. This was a mural in Sri Lanka depicting her voyage from northern India to Sri Lanka. What does it have to do with me? So in 2004, in Queensland, Australia, Queensland Gallery of Modern Art, the director asked me to do a new project for the inauguration of that museum in 2008. He said, Mingwei, come and do a project for us. This is going to be an art project, but it's also going to be a permanent artwork at the Gallery of Modern Art. I proposed, okay, I'm going to come and plant a tree. But this is not just a simple tree. This is a tree of a sacred origin. So my project was to go back to Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka, where Princess Sanghamitta planted this tree 2,300 years ago. So what I'm showing right now on the image is that particular tree. It's very, 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 very large now. It took us 4 years to explain to the high priest and the government there that this is a genuine act of sincerity. I think what really made them understand what I was doing was that I had to explain to them in the contemporary world, we usually go to museums to have that sense of enlightenment or a little understanding of who we are. And he said, yeah, it's just like going to a temple, right? I said, yes, that's exactly what it is. So when the high priest prepared this Bodhi tree for me, this was that sapling, very small, right? All the villagers were sitting around the mother tree, chanting sacred chants to the mother tree 24 hours for a whole week to prepare for the departure of this baby tree to go to Queensland. The high priest handed this Bodhi tree to me, and instead of Pali, which was a sacred chanting language, he spoke in English. He said, you, as a sacred tree, your job is to go as big, as strong as you can, so you can create shades and shadow for the children and the animal there. He did not say anything about Buddhist practice. When I had this in my hand, I almost dropped it because emotionally and historically, it was so heavy. I took this plant, walk around the mother tree 3 times, just so I can say goodbye to the mother tree. Silly me, I took the sapling and then went on to Qantas airline. They stopped me at the gate and say, no, you cannot do this. This is an exotic plant. No exotic plant can go into Australia until quarantine. So I had to use DHL. Lucky enough, the custom officer at Queensland was from Sri Lanka. And uncannily, her house was only a mile away from the sacred tree. She felt it was life and life of good deeds that she was given this incredible honor and gift to take care of the sacred tree. 2008, during the opening and inauguration of the Gallery of Modern Art Queensland, I was fortunate enough to work with the nuns from Fo Guangshan to create this ceremony. So every year, these nuns would come and chant to the tree for 24 hours, so the tree is imbued in sacred energy. A few years later, somebody sent me this photograph. So you can see the father and the child is taking a nap underneath a tree. And then 2 years later, she has become so huge. I am very certain she's going to outlast everyone and everything around her because a Bodhi tree grows to 3,500 years. Next time when you go to Queensland, Brisbane, please go say hello to her. I am sure she will be delighted to meet you. The last story I want to share with you happened 80 years ago. In 1937, the bombing of this little town called Guernica in Spain killed many, many people there. Picasso was so overwhelmed with grief and anger when he was living in Paris when this happened in 1937. So in 2.5 weeks, he created this iconic work in Western history called Guernica. My response to his painting and the tragedy that happened, and especially after 9/11, living in New York, I created a very large sand painting. This sand painting, or this artwork called Guernica in Sand, has 3 stages to it. The first stage takes about 7 weeks within the exhibition time. So it was a stationary installation, and this is all you're going to see for 7 weeks. The second phase of the work is actually interactive. What I'm going to do is that I will show you a short 2-minute video in silence of what happened between sunrise and sunset on one of the morning on the 8th week. Okay, please. So at the sunset, this was the picture. And at sunrise, this was the encounter. Today, when you leave this room, when you go home, I want to invite you to look around you, every object, every person, every event. They are there not because of you. We are lucky enough to encounter them, just like when I encounter Guernica, when I encounter Bodhi tree, and when I encounter Mount Stewart. We are all heart-wrenchingly beautiful because we're fragile and we are only here for a split second. Thank you so much.